The desperate call. The crystalline spires of New Haven glittered under the twin suns of the Rylax system, their once pristine surfaces now scared by orbital bombardment. Ambassador Silvera stood at the window of the emergency command center, her iridescent scales dulled with exhaustion as she watched another barrage of Vorkath plasma torpedoes streak through the atmospheric shields. 3 months ago, the Rylaxian colony had been a beacon of scientific advancement and cultural exchange. Now, it was the last stronghold of her people in this sector. The Vorkath Empire's expansion had been relentless, their warships devastating any civilization that refused to submit to their rule. Ambassador called out Chief Technician Zexlor, his voice trembling despite his attempts to maintain composure. The outer shield generators are at 12% capacity. We have maybe 2 days before total failure. Silvera turned from the window, her 4 eyes focusing on the holographic display at the center of the room. The defensive grid was collapsing sector by sector, each failure bringing the Vorkath closer to their final objective, the complete subjugation of New Haven. "What about the evacuation ships?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "The Vorkath have established a full blockade," reported Security Director Karvak. "No vessel larger than a personal transport could slip through their net, and even those would be suicide runs." The command center fell silent save for the distant rumble of explosions and the soft hum of failing systems. They had tried everything: diplomatic channels, defensive strategies, even attempting to call their homeworld for reinforcements. But the Vorkath had been thorough in their invasion, cutting off all standard communication routes. "There might be one option left," said Zexlor, his hands moving across his console with nervous energy. "But it's either brilliant or completely insane." Silvera moved to his station, her ceremonial robes brushing against the floor. "At this point, Chief Technician, insanity might be our only viable strategy." Zexlor pulled up an old star chart, pointing to a sector marked in warning colors. "There are stories, mostly dismissed as myths, about a species from this region of space. They're called humans. And he hesitated. "They're Deathworlders." The room's temperature seemed to drop at the mention of that word. Deathworlders, species that evolved on planets so hostile that merely surviving made them formidable. Most spacefaring races came from comfortable worlds with stable environments. But Deathworlders, they were forged in the crucible of constant environmental challenges. The stories say they've developed technology and tactics unlike anything in known space, Zexlor continued. "They think differently, fight differently. Some say they've never lost a war. And some say they don't exist," Karvak interjected. "We're betting our survival on legends." "No," Silvera said firmly. "We're betting our survival on the only option we have left. How can we contact them?" Zexlor's fingers flew across his console. "I've been studying old communication protocols. The humans, if they exist, use different frequencies than standard galactic channels. If we modify our quantum array, we might be able to reach them. But what? The power requirements would be enormous. We'd have to divert energy from the shields. It would leave us vulnerable." Silvera looked back at the window, watching another bombardment light up the sky. They were already vulnerable. At least this way, they might have a chance. How long would it take to send the message? 10 minutes to modify the array, another 5 to transmit. During that time, shield strength would drop to critical levels. The next explosion was closer, rattling the reinforced windows. Silvera straightened her spine, making the decision that would either save her people or doom them. Do it. The next 15 minutes were the longest of Silvera's life. As Zexlor worked to modify the communication array, the Vorkath seemed to sense their vulnerability. The bombardment intensified, each impact bringing them closer to breach. Finally, Zexlor looked up. "It's ready. What should we send?" Silvera stepped forward, her voice clear and steady despite the chaos around them. "This is the colony of New Haven, calling any human vessels. We are under attack by the Vorkath Empire. Our people face extinction. If you exist, if you can hear us, we need your help. We offer everything we have in exchange for your intervention. Please, we have nowhere else to turn." The message was sent, broadcasting on frequencies that hadn't been used in centuries, aimed at a sector of space that most considered too dangerous to approach. As the last transmission went out, the shield generators screamed in protest, and sections of the defensive grid began to fail completely. "Now what?" Karvak asked, watching as Vorkath ships began moving into position for what could be their final assault. "Now," Silvera said, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the atmosphere, "we pray that the legends are true." In the darkness of space, the message traveled outward, crossing vast distances as it searched for recipients that many believed were merely myths. But myths, as the galaxy was about to learn, sometimes have a way of becoming reality. Humanity's response. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the TFS Hyperion, her expression unchanged as she listened to the alien distress call for the third time. The massive view screen before her displayed the signal analysis, its quantum signatures confirming what many had thought impossible. First contact had finally arrived in the form of a desperate plea for help. "Signal authenticity confirmed," Admiral reported Commander Jackson from his station. The transmission originated from the Rylax system, approximately 70 light-years from our outer colonies. Their technology signatures match our theoretical models of Type Ia civilizations. Chen's dark eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. The Hyperion, flagship of humanity's 13th Fleet, had been conducting routine patrols along the edge of human space when they intercepted the message. Now they faced a decision that would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. "What do we know about these Vorkath?" she asked, her voice steady and measured. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, head of Sino-Analysis, stepped forward. "Based on the signal data and our long-range scans, they appear to be a highly militant species. Their ships utilize plasma-based weapons technology, but their real advantage seems to be numbers. They're throwing everything they have at this colony." Chen nodded slowly. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for first contact, developing technologies and strategies that took into account their unique advantages. They had evolved on a death world, Earth, where every day was a struggle for survival. It had made them adaptable, resilient, and incredibly innovative in combat. "Contact Fleet Command," Chen ordered. "Tell them we're initiating First Contact Protocol 7. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Protocol 7. Armed intervention in defense of a spacefaring civilization. It was something they had trained for, but never expected to implement. "Ma'am," Commander Jackson spoke up, "Fleet Command's response will take at least 6 hours to reach us. The Relaxian colony might not have that long." Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. "That's why I'm not waiting for their response. This is exactly why they put experienced commanders in the field." She turned to her tactical officer. "Sound General Quarters. I want all ships at battle stations in 15 minutes." The 13th Fleet was small by human standards, just 15 ships. But each vessel represented the pinnacle of human military technology. The Hyperion alone carried enough firepower to level a continent, and its sister ships were equally well armed. Lieutenant Yu, begin calculating jump coordinates. Commander Rodriguez, I want a full analysis of Vorkath shield frequencies. If we're going to crash this party, we're going to do it right. The bridge erupted into activity as orders were relayed and preparations began. Chen watched her crew work with pride. Humans had spent generations wondering if they were alone in the universe, preparing for the day they would meet alien civilizations. Now that day had come, and they would show the galaxy exactly what humanity was capable of. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Yu, "engineering reports quantum drives are spooling up. We can jump in 20 minutes. Chen nodded, her mind already working through combat scenarios. The Vorkath had numbers on their side, but they had never faced anything like a human fleet before. Earth's gravity was nearly twice that of most habitable worlds, making human ships more resilient. Their reflexes were faster, their bodies better adapted to the stress of combat maneuvers. "Send a message to the Rylaxian colony," she ordered. "Keep it simple. Hold position. Help is coming." As the fleet prepared for jump, Chen accessed the tactical database on her personal display. The Vorkath would learn what many on Earth had learned throughout history. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the biggest or the most numerous, but the one that has spent its entire existence learning to overcome impossible odds. "Jump coordinates locked," reported Yu. "Fleet is in formation and awaiting your command." Chen took one last look at the distress signal display. These Rylaxians had reached out into the darkness, hoping to find salvation. Instead, they had awakened something the galaxy wasn't prepared for: humanity's unwavering determination to protect those in need. "All ships, execute jump on my mark," she commanded. "Let's show these Vorkath why they should have stayed in their own territory." The quantum drives hummed to life, creating artificial wormholes that would carry the fleet across vast distances of space. As the countdown began, Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had always wondered what their first major interaction with alien life would be like. Now they would make their entrance onto the galactic stage, not with handshakes and diplomatic ceremonies, but with shields up and weapons charged. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The fleet vanished in a flash of quantum energy, leaving behind empty space and racing toward a battle that would change the course of galactic history. The humans were coming, and they were about to demonstrate why Deathworld species were the stuff of legend. First contact. The Rylaxian command center erupted in chaos as dozens of quantum ruptures tore open the fabric of space above New Haven. Ambassador Silvera watched in awe as ships emerged from the wounds in reality, vessels unlike anything she had ever seen. Their hulls were dark and angular, bearing none of the sweeping curves common to most galactic designs. They moved with precision that seemed impossible for their size, immediately forming a defensive screen between the colony and the Vorkath fleet. "By the first light," whispered Zexlor, his scanners struggling to analyze the newcomers. They came. They actually came. The Vorkath response was immediate and predictable. They opened fire, expecting to overwhelm these new adversaries with sheer firepower. Their plasma torpedoes streaked across space, a barrage that would have crippled most defense fleets. But the human ships didn't dodge. They didn't even try to evade. Instead, the incoming plasma simply washed over their shields, dissipating harmlessly against barrier technology that operated on principles the Rylaxians couldn't even begin to understand. Then the human fleet responded. Admiral Chen's voice was calm as she gave the order. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what we can do." The Hyperion's main guns spoke first, unleashing streams of hypervelocity projectiles that ignored shields and tore through Vorkath vessels like paper. Unlike the energy weapons favored by most species, there was no way to deflect physical rounds moving at appreciable percentages of light speed. "Multiple enemy ships disabled," reported Commander Jackson. "Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons. They have no defense against kinetic strikes." Chen nodded, watching as the Vorkath formation began to break apart. "Launch strike craft. Let's show them what happens when you pick on someone who can actually fight back." Squadrons of human fighters poured from the larger vessels, their pilots experiencing G-forces that would have killed most alien species. The small craft wove through enemy fire with impossible agility, their pilots' natural resistance to high-G maneuvers giving them an overwhelming advantage in close combat. On the colony's surface, the Rylaxians watched in stunned silence as their invincible tormentors were systematically dismantled by the newcomers. The Vorkath attempted to adjust their tactics to compensate for this unexpected resistance, but they were facing an enemy that operated outside their experience. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Yu, "we're being hailed by the surface. It's the colony leadership." "Put them through," Chen ordered, straightening her uniform. First impressions mattered, even in the middle of a battle. Ambassador Silvera's image appeared on the main screen, her four eyes wide with a mixture of relief and disbelief. You are the humans, the Deathworlders. Chen allowed herself a small smile. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation ship Hyperion. We received your distress call. I apologize for any delay in our response. A massive explosion lit up the tactical display as another Vorkath cruiser succumbed to human weaponry. The enemy fleet was now in full retreat, their formation shattered by an opponent they couldn't understand or counter. You've saved us, Salvera said, her voice thick with emotion. We had heard stories, legends of your kind, but we never truly believed. Ambassador, Chen interrupted gently, I suggest you reinforce your shields. The Vorkath are running, but they've left behind some surprises. She turned to her tactical officer. Target those cloaked demolition charges they dropped during their retreat. Let's clean up their mess. The human fleet moved with surgical precision, neutralizing the hidden explosives before they could detonate. It was the kind of subtle threat that might have devastated the colony if not for the advanced sensors of human warships. As the last charges were destroyed, Chen turned back to the view screen. Ambassador, with your permission, I'd like to send down a delegation. We have much to discuss, and I believe both our peoples could benefit from a more formal introduction. Silvera nodded eagerly. Of course, Admiral. We would be honored. Though I must warn you, our atmosphere is highly caustic by human standards, Chen finished. Don't worry. Our environmental suits are designed for conditions far worse than this. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. A little acid rain won't bother us. The ambassador's scales shifted color in what Chen's xenoanalysis team identified as amazement. These humans hadn't just defeated a superior force. They had done it with an ease that bordered on casual, and now they were treating lethal environmental conditions as a minor inconvenience. Prepare a landing team, Chen ordered. Full diplomatic protocol, but maintain combat readiness. The Vorkath might be running, but they're not finished. She looked back at Silvera. Ambassador, this is just the beginning. The galaxy is a dangerous place, but humanity has spent its entire existence learning to overcome dangers. We'd be honored to help your people do the same. As the human ships moved into defensive positions around New Haven, the Rylaxians began to understand what they had truly done by sending out that distress call. They hadn't just found allies. They had attracted the attention of a species that had mastered the art of survival against impossible odds, a race of Deathworlders who brought with them both protection and a fundamental change to the balance of power in the galaxy. The legend of humanity was about to become very real indeed. The battle for New Haven. Multiple quantum ruptures detected. Lieutenant Yu's voice cut through the relative calm that had settled over the Hyperion's bridge. Massive Vorkath fleet incoming. At least 60 capital ships. Admiral Chen didn't flinch as the tactical display lit up with new contacts. The Vorkath had returned as expected, but this time they had brought their main battle fleet. The quantum ripples faded to reveal a massive armada of warships, their hulls bristling with weapons. They really don't like losing, do they? Chen mused, studying the enemy formation. Status of our defensive preparations. Commander Jackson pulled up a holographic overlay of the system. Colony shields are at full strength after our upgrades. The automated defense platforms are online, and our ground teams have finished training the Rylaxian defense forces. We're as ready as we're going to be. The past week had been a flurry of activity as the human fleet helped fortify New Haven. Engineers had worked around the clock to integrate human technology with Rylaxian systems, while combat instructors taught the basics of human warfare to their new allies. Message from the Vorkath flagship, reported communications. They're demanding our immediate surrender and withdrawal from the system. Chen's lips curved into a predatory smile. Send them our response. Come and get us. The Vorkath fleet surged forward, their ships arranged in the same rigid formations that had served them well in countless previous conquests. But this time, they were facing an enemy that wrote their own rules of engagement. Execute Operation Thunderbolt, Chen ordered. Let's show them why you should never corner a species that evolved as both predator and prey. The human fleet scattered in what appeared to be chaos, their ships breaking formation and flying in seemingly random patterns. To the Vorkath, it looked like panic, until the trap was sprung. Quantum mines, planted days ago in anticipation of this very moment, detonated throughout the enemy formation. The explosions weren't designed to destroy, but to disrupt the Vorkath's sophisticated shield harmonics. In the confusion, human strike craft slipped through the gaps, targeting key systems with precision strikes. They're adapting, Jackson warned as the Vorkath fleet began to compensate for the mines, breaking into smaller battle groups. Just as expected, Chen replied. Signal the Rylaxian defense grid. Execute Phase 2. The colony's defensive platforms, upgraded with human targeting systems, suddenly powered up. But instead of firing their weapons, they began broadcasting on frequencies that the human fleet had carefully calculated. The interference patterns created zones where Vorkath shields fluctuated weakly, creating perfect firing lanes for the human gunners. Multiple enemy ships have lost shield coherence, you reported with satisfaction. Their formations are breaking down. The space around New Haven erupted in chaos as human vessels executed maneuvers that would have torn apart ships built to lesser standards. They twisted and rolled through space, their crews protected by inertial dampeners originally designed to handle the crushing gravity of Earth. Each movement was precisely calculated to take advantage of the Vorkath's rigid tactical doctrine. But the Vorkath hadn't conquered half a sector by being completely inflexible. Their commander finally realized the trap and ordered his ships to break formation completely, attempting to turn the battle into a chaotic free-for-all. They're learning, Chen observed. Good. Now let's teach them why that was a mistake. All ships implement scattered thunder protocols. The human fleet suddenly shifted tactics. Instead of maintaining their hit-and-run attacks, they grouped into 3 ship formations, each group operating independently, but coordinating through quantum-encrypted channels that the Vorkath couldn't detect, let alone decrypt. The enemy flagship is launching boarding craft, Jackson reported. They're trying to overwhelm us with numbers. Chen nodded, having anticipated this move. Deploy the Marines. Let's show them what happens when you try to board a ship crewed by Deathworlders. The Vorkath boarding parties breached several human vessels, expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they encountered human Marines in powered armor, warriors who had trained in gravity nearly twice what most species considered normal. The resulting close-quarters combat was brutally short. Enemy forces are pulling back from boarding actions, reported security. Their casualties are extreme. In space, the battle continued to rage. The Vorkath still had superior numbers, but they were learning a harsh lesson about quality versus quantity. Human ships, built to withstand the crushing pressures of Earth's gravity well, shrugged off hits that would have crippled other vessels. Their crews evolved to survive on a planet that constantly tried to kill them, made decisions and executed maneuvers at speeds that left their enemies struggling to respond. Admiral, Yu called out, we're detecting power spikes in the enemy fleet. They're preparing to launch a massive plasma barrage. Chen's expression remained calm. Perfect. Spring the final trap. All ships, activate plasma attraction fields. As the Vorkath released their devastating barrage, the human fleet activated their secret weapon. Gravitational manipulation fields originally designed to protect Earth from solar flares. The incoming plasma was caught, redirected, and hurled back at the enemy fleet with devastating accuracy. Multiple enemy ships critically damaged, Jackson reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Their fleet cohesion is collapsing. The Vorkath, faced with an enemy that had countered every tactic and turned their own weapons against them, finally began a full retreat. Their once mighty armada, now reduced to less than half its original strength, fled into quantum space. As the last enemy ships disappeared, Shen allowed herself to relax slightly. Damage report. Minor damage to outer hull plating on 3 ships, Jackson replied. no casualties. The Vorkath never knew what hit them. Chen nodded, satisfied. The battle was won, but more importantly, a message had been sent to the galaxy at large. Humanity had arrived, and they were a force to be reckoned with. "Signal New Haven," she ordered. "Tell them their system is secure. And prepare a full report for Fleet Command. I think it's time we discussed a more permanent presence in this sector." The stars twinkled peacefully once more above New Haven, but the galaxy had changed forever. The legend of the Deathworlders was no longer just a story. It was a new reality that would reshape the balance of power for centuries to come. Aftermath and Alliance. The grand chamber of New Haven's central spire gleamed with restored brilliance, its crystalline walls no longer bearing the scars of war. 1 month had passed since the Battle of New Haven, and representatives from across the sector had gathered to witness something unprecedented: the formal alliance between a Deathworld species and the greater galactic community. Admiral Chen stood before the assembled dignitaries, her dress uniform adorned with the symbols of both Earth and New Haven. Beside her, Ambassador Silvera addressed the gathered crowd, her scales shimmering with colors of pride and hope. "Today marks not just the end of a conflict," Silvera announced, her voice carrying through the chamber, "but the beginning of a new era. The Vorkath Empire's expansion has been halted, and more importantly, we have gained allies who have shown us that the greatest strength comes not from conquest, but from cooperation." The audience included not just Rylaxians, but representatives from a dozen other species who had heard of the battle. Some had come out of curiosity, others out of fear, but all were intensely interested in these humans who had so decisively changed the balance of power. "The humans," Silvera continued, "have taught us that true power lies not in overwhelming force, but in adaptability, innovation, and the willingness to stand up for others. They came to our aid not because they had to, but because they chose to." Chen stepped forward to speak, her voice steady and clear. "Humanity spent centuries wondering if we were alone in the universe. We prepared for first contact, hoping to find friends but ready for adversaries. What we found instead was an opportunity, a chance to help, to protect, and to build something greater than ourselves." The chamber fell silent as holographic displays activated, showing the proposed defensive network that would protect not just New Haven, but the entire sector. Human engineering combined with Rylaxian technology had produced innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. "The Terran Federation doesn't seek to dominate," Chen explained, "but to cooperate. Yes, we evolved on a world that many would consider hostile. Yes, our capabilities in combat are significant. But what truly makes humanity special is our desire to use those capabilities to protect others." In the weeks since the battle, the changes had been remarkable. Human engineers had helped rebuild New Haven's infrastructure, incorporating Earth-based designs that could withstand far more punishment than the original structures. Rylaxian scientists, in turn, had shared their advanced biotechnology, leading to breakthroughs that would benefit both species. "We are establishing a permanent joint defense force in this sector," Chen announced. "Any civilization that wishes to join our mutual protection pact is welcome. The days of the strong preying on the weak are over." The implications were clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as protectors. The Vorkath Empire, upon learning of the complete defeat of their fleet, had already begun withdrawing from contested territories. After the ceremony, Chen stood with Silvera on one of the spire's observation decks, watching ships from various species coming and going through New Haven's busy spaceports. Human vessels flew alongside alien craft, their crews learning to work together. "You've changed everything," Silvera said softly. "Not just for us, but for the entire sector. The Vorkath were considered invincible before you arrived." Chen smiled, watching as a group of human engineers worked alongside Rylaxian technicians to install new defensive systems. "We simply showed them something they didn't expect, that being strong doesn't mean you have to be cruel, and that true power comes from protecting others." "And what happens when they return? or when something worse comes along? Silvera asked. Then they'll find us ready, Chen replied. Humanity spent its entire history learning to survive against overwhelming odds. Now we're teaching others to do the same. That's the real strength of Deathworlders. Not just that we can fight, but that we can help others learn to stand up for themselves. In orbit above New Haven, the combined fleet of human and Rylaxian ships maintained their vigilant watch. But they were no longer just defending one world. They were laying the groundwork for a new kind of interstellar society, one where the strong protected the weak, and where cooperation trumped conquest. The legend of the Deathworlders had evolved. Humanity was no longer just a myth to frighten children or a story of unstoppable warriors. They had become something far more important. Proof that strength and compassion could coexist, that evolution on a harsh world didn't have to lead to harsh behavior. As the twin suns set on New Haven, casting the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple, Shen reflected on how far they'd come. A simple distress call had led to humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, but it was their choices after answering that call that would define their place in the cosmos. The galaxy was changing, and humanity would help guide that change. Not through force, but through protection. Not through fear, but through cooperation. The age of the Deathworlders had begun, and it promised to be more remarkable than anyone could have imagined.